So, like the Swallows returning to San Juan Capistrano, which is a totally fresh reference, an annual tradition has returned. A tradition that shaped us, that molded us, that made Emergency Podcast what it is. We have a kit leak. We have a kit leak emergency. It is again a completely ridiculous mechanism that has given us our first real look at the kit, but on an actual human being, a Austin influencer who is known for doing various restaurant reviews and taking photos of her ever Instagrammable life, we shall say.
Her name's Jane Coe. Her influencer account is a taste of Coco.
She had a picture of her wearing the new kit, which some people are calling the Coco kit. I kind of like that. I think
I don't like it at all. I don't like it at all. One, because it shouldn't be a brand extension of an influencer who leaked a kit violating an NDA.
True.
Important to note, this is a video in her Instagram story. It immediately caught on like wildfire because, as reviled as she has become among the Austin community for treating waitstaffs terribly, allegedly, plenty of people still follow her on Instagram because this caught on like Verde wildfire. What I like a lot more is a thing that kind of developed in the LV Slack, which friend of the show, Long Cow, deserves credit for, is looking at this as a rotated Blues Clues kit because it doesn't have hoops like Steve's rugby shirt. I don't know why I didn't see it before. That's the initial notes that I had. Also, it seems that the authentic kit has a different collar than the replica that the previous leak from a hanger in a back room somewhere carried. And it seems that people are coming around on the design when they see the actual jersey and not the replica that cuts corners so that they can make it for probably $20 cheaper and sell it for $20 less.
Right. I think she had the collar tucked in, which was a choice, but it did look better than the initial pictures. I am maybe coming around to it a little bit. I do want to say, though, just as somebody who watched Blues Clues with a child during its heyday, there was Steve and there was Joe, who was the other friend of Blues. And yeah, Steve went to college, quote unquote. I think they probably replaced him with somebody less cynical because Joe was warm and cuddly comparatively. Steve had this kind of cynicism about him. And of course, I loved Steve for that. Also, I would love hoops in that color scheme. Some people are meaning to ridicule the kit for looking like Steve from Blue's Clues shirt, but I think that's great. I think they
it's
should
awesome.
have actually gone with exactly that. That is where we stand.
There would be a mini revolt
Yes?
with hoops because Frisco uses hoops, Kansas City
Sure.
uses hoops. Phil, your disloyalty has been noted by many. I'm just saying. Your love of hoops for some people, arch betrayal. I'm much easier on that kind of thing. But look, Steve, Joe, I'm not going to stand for the Josh erasure. Josh is much newer, but Josh is awesome as a semi-retired children's entertainer. I got to speak up for my fellow guys who talk like this to kids. Hey, guys, I think it having Blues Clues vibes it is undeniably better than crediting it to the influencer who accidentally leaked it. I don't thank you to her. I don't know her. I don't know who she is. I don't know anything about her. Apologies to this man, as it were. But yeah, it's the Blues Clues kit. You want to call it the Stu's Clues kit? Okay, tie it into the club.
So you're faulting me for wanting hoops. You're wanting to call it the Blues Clues kit. And we could go down a big list of all the teams that actually use blue.
We could.
But I wouldn't say that I'm disloyal to Austin FC. I just really like hoops. So I want to say that I'm loyal to fashion.
Emergency podcast. They did a thing, so we gotta talk about it. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency. Emergency podcast. Shut up, oh yeah, shut up, oh yeah, shut up. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency.
Hey, a hearty hello to you all, and welcome to Emergency Podcast, the Austin FC podcast, where we talk about all the Austin FC emergencies. I'm Phil West. I'm clearly loyal to fashion for anybody who sees me on a game day. And Moisés, they also see you on a game day. Game day's coming up in about 4-ish weeks here. We got some preseason games going on. Lots happening, some signings. We're going to get right into it. But first of all, how are you? Your feelings about the kit now that you've gone through two different stories, two different
mystery.
that kind
I'm
of thing.
I'm
What do
I'm
we?
good. I think off the top, now that we've actually seen the authentic fabric, that makes a difference. Seeing
Mhm.
it in natural light makes a difference. That is how people are going to see them on people walking to and from the stadium, at the stadium, covering each other with beer and water and hopefully 3 points and so on. I feel like the popular consensus is coming around on it, seeing it in
Mhm.
actual natural human situations. Go figure. Same kind of thing that happened to the Dillo kit last year, where people looked at a flat image in a video game leak and they went, "Oh, white ringer tee, who cares?" And then they saw it and they went, "Oh, that actually that kind of works. That kind of slaps," and bought them
Right,
in the
right.
droves. So yeah, I think go figure. People actually see the actual thing, and it turns out it is better than something that is not representative of the actual thing. But I'm good.
Right.
We're not used to this full of a roster, Phil. We're not used to
No,
this much
no.
new. How much how much smoke can we handle
A lot
capacity
of
like at
smoke.
this point?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do. Oh, one more thing in the kits before we move on to other things. I again, like we thought for a while that it was going to be maybe black with some green pinstripes. I'm thinking now that everybody is going to appreciate that it's only black piping rather than a majority black jersey in the July, August kind of time of year. Green is a much lighter color than black. You might appreciate that walking to the stadium on a July evening where it is still 105 degrees out. I'm just going to say. All right. So,
Yeah.
yeah, let's go. We've got nearly a full roster. We have 19 senior players now. We have all three DPs. Somebody has snagged the number 10 that Sebastian Driussi left behind. Myrto Uzuni, the long rumored designated player winger slash center forward from Granada, is indeed coming to Austin. A club record fee. We have not been told how much. Rumors say it's in the $12 million range, which is a lot, but it also seems like perhaps salary wise, it's not going to be as egregious as it was for Driussi. Guy scores a lot of goals. Good things all around. We think, we don't know. There's still some questions. We're going to get to those questions in a little bit, but just first reactions about Uzuni now that we've looked at the charts, we've seen the numbers, we've looked at the highlight videos. He's finally here, did his welcome video in Spanish, coming over, taking that number 10 at some point when immigration lets him in, and then got an interesting thing for Nico Estevez to figure out. How are you going to maximize him in the lineup? So, Moises, what do you think?
I think focusing on the business side of the transaction first, we've seen this trend. We're looking at these very big transfer fees and lower salaries on the DPs. Instead of one gigantic salary, we're looking at that salary split into thirds.
Hmm.
And I think that there are a couple things to note on this. On the one, I've found some of the chatter among the fan base curious, people going, "Oh, why are they spending this much?" Wait a minute. I thought you wanted them to spend this much. I thought the
Mhm.
problem was that that you didn't think they spent enough money or weren't willing to spend that much money. That is a sign of confidence, a sign of very much going in the direction of seriously
Mhm.
challenging for MLS Cup the same year that their city hosts All Star, the
Right.
same year that their team returns to the Open Cup, we think, the same year that the League's Cup schedule is more the midweek Champions League style thing that happens later in the season after all of these new pieces get incorporated into the lineup. I feel like Myrto Uzuni, in that welcome message in the press release, saying that he is coming here to break records, this is the kind of confidence that people have wanted. This is the
Mhm.
lack
Yep.
of hedging. This is the I'm coming to do the job and not and not in a 9-1 formation, but as part of a team. And I think they
Right.
note
Right.
him as a forward slash winger. We'll get to this in a bit. I think is very much the nail in the coffin of the old way that this roster had to be built is
Mhm.
well and truly dead. And it is built to maximize around flexible players who are flexible positionally, both in terms of the way that they are set up at the beginning of a game and how that will fluidly change in a true implementation of the pet ball version of total football, not the Berhalter ball version of it that is
Right.
much more robotic, much more this is your
Mhm.
spot, this is what you do, and you will wait until precisely this tick of the clock to shift to this position. This is true total football, and that's what has me most excited about what I see as the new keystone addition across the roster. Yeah, and that isn't to say better than Vasquez or anything, but this is truly speaking to what the overall squad formation is going to be like because this is what we're doing with the guy who's wearing the 10.
Right. Yeah. And two kind of initial reactions from what you're saying, definitely in terms of flexibility, in terms of positional flexibility, in terms of this kind of total football approach. Yeah, I agree that this totally signals that. I do have some concerns, which we'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, in terms of the spending money, it's not your money. Again, if you're spending a lot on a transfer fee, but you're not spending as much on a salary, it doesn't really necessarily matter versus if you're getting, like, for example, with Driussi, I think it was only like a $7 million transfer fee only, right? So still a lot of money by
Yeah.
MLS standards, but then also paying 6.7 million a year. That all adds up. And obviously, when you're figuring in DP status, again, Bukari is only making $1 million only, right? I would love to make $1 million. You would love to make $1 million because of his transfer fee, even though he's under what's traditionally the DP salary, that all gets figured in. And that transfer fee plus salary is what determines that kind of DP level. And like you were suggesting, the transfer fee can get amortized throughout the length of the contract. And MLS Cup, I'm going to slow our roll here a little bit. This team is definitely better. I think this team has the talent to definitely be top four in the conference. I think that getting into MLS Cup, getting through the playoffs with a team that's missed it 2 years in a row, I think that's a pretty tall order. I think there is something to be said for playoff experience. I mean, the Galaxy is going through some weird transitional stuff. They're losing some key players. Obviously, Ricky Puig is going to be out most of the year, but they still have a lot of attacking talent. LAFC is reloading. They're looking pretty strong. Seattle is obviously doing some things that make them much more interesting. Those four teams are probably going to be in it. Definitely, Houston's got some drop off. Dallas has some drop off. I don't see other West teams that are doing like really spectacular things at the moment, really. Obviously, RSL losing Chicho is something that they're going to have to adjust to.
To be clear, I don't mean that I'm actively predicting that they will be one of the last two teams left in the playoffs. They will definitely make it to MLS Cup. I'm saying challenging for MLS Cup is a different thing than we're hoping to make it to the playoffs. We're hoping to
Right. That's a
get
good point.
into the dance. It's more they are looking this squad, this overall orientation of things looks more serious so that the optimism that we were having to engage in was just to have something make us feel alive at different parts of last season. Let's be honest, right?
Right.
It was okay. What is the most optimistic that we can be, and how just off the edge of impossible does that optimism require us to be hoping for? This is a totally different thing. This is a
Right.
serious
Yeah.
playoff contention team, the way that it looks on paper.
This is not, we've made it to sixth place. What a heady rush, right? Playoffs are baseline, right? We're saying top six has to be a baseline based on the talent that they've accumulated at this point, right?
I feel like the kind of 1,000-yard stare that you would see on Roto Borrell's face after some of those games last season.
Right.
I think that the tremendous amount of lack of work-life balance that went into this offseason and building this roster was a statement to that's never happening again. Not on this guy's watch. That is the seriousness of the sporting operation. And for all of the things, rightly or wrongly, that people may have to say critically about ownership and management at the club, they supported this guy making the moves that needed to happen. Granted, as you said, there's some caveats, some notes for concern that you've got that I think are valid, that you wrote up very expertly, as we had a while to wait for these medicals to finish for the thing to get official. But it's not remotely the weird kinds of gaping caveats that we were dealing with, or where it was, well, this player on this money wouldn't be that bad if the whole rest of the roster did not make it seem like a total disaster. Well, this wouldn't look that bad. We're not doing as much of that. It's more look at all of these different opportunities that are attached to this player being in the lineup and a few things here and there where it's, well, Jean Kolmanich is only left-footed, which it'd be great if he weren't just left-footed. But on the one hand, he's good on that one left foot. So,
left-footed enough to get another year extension.
Exactly. Yeah. To me, it is that we're basking in multiple different pathways and not doing the Doctor Strange in Infinity War thing that I was having to do toward the end of last year, going, what's the one way that this could actually work? And and then being immediately misunderstood as saying that I was definitely saying was going to happen. I was saying, no, this is the only way that it's going to happen. I'm not saying it's likely. I'm not saying I think it'll happen. But this is what we're looking at. I don't see us having to deal with those kinds of probabilities at this stage, the way that I feel like at the beginning of last season, we did feel this way, where we were like, what is going to happen with this fragmented of a roster? And these are the pieces that are there to fill into. How does this go any version of well? And we did not see that at this point last year.
Right, right. Yeah, Eric Goodman from the Chronicle had an interesting point on the site that shall not be named, which I peek at with increasing infrequency. But he had made a point about, oh, all this attacking talent that Josh Wolf would have loved to have. And somebody had responded, that's why we don't let toddlers drive Lambos or something along those lines. Josh Wolf might feel like a little hard done by that this roster is suddenly being rebuilt into something that is much more offensively potent. But I also think that, again, you remember for a time, Josh Wolf was both sporting director and head coach. I think it was under his watch that they decided that a big contract to Ghazi Sardis would be a good idea, which of course was the first of what could be now 2 buyouts in 2024, 2025, a buyout that was announced when it was still 2024, not even 2025 yet. And we had our first, well, we thought at the time was our only 2025 buyout, but now there's another. So again, yeah, there are still like a few weird contracts on this roster, contracts that like Roto is probably not terribly jazzed about, but this has been, again, we don't know how these players are going to work out, but if you just look at it from this roster needed to be overhauled, these players needed to be brought in, look at the players that he brought in, it's pretty impressive. Obviously, he's got his critics out there who, one certain critics saying, well, he's a second division Spanish player. And that's clearly, if you play for anything other than a first division, you're not worth anything really, right?
Yeah.
Dennis Wonga was a League Two player.
Exactly.
Certainly, didn't. Why LAFC picked him, we'll never know.
Yeah, what a jerk, what a loser. Didn't know how to score goals. No, just, I mean, terrible player. Yeah, Ligue 2 and La Liga 2 are teams battling for promotion relegation on that line in those two leagues. This is a very different caliber of player than I think you are looking at in the general MLS pool of players, something that MLS itself is really trying to be back on. It feels to me like this is not just a coach changeover and here's some new players. Going back to Josh's time at the club, it had nothing to do with the rest of the roster that he, for whatever reason, was very much not letting Danny Pereira play more of an attacking role. He was very much keeping him isolated in a very specific role when, to me, the times that we have seen him unlock and open up in the best ways has been when he has gone outside of those bounds, when he has gone fully adaptive, fully dynamic, is not worried about what's being screamed at him from the sidelines, and is just playing soccer along with his teammates. That is something that it really is not a secret among the fan base or anybody who's marginally dialed in, that there was a certain strictness with which Josh played a style of football, positional play that was ostensibly supposed to be about flexibility, that really made these players not just pissy that they weren't scoring hat tricks or something, but that it was hectoring them in, no offense to Hector Jimenez, in ways that limited them from doing the things that they're best at doing. We saw some of that in the open practice where we got to see the difference between CJ playing at striker and Brandon playing at striker and Micah playing at striker and Rubio playing at striker. That's what has me the most encouraged about this whole dynamic of things. We haven't recorded since the open practice either, right?
Right. No, we have not. You reminded me of something because I remember Danny saying in an interview about being number 6 and his role on the team, talking about himself being a number 6. And to me, that seemed like Josh Wolf was behind him in the hostage video rather than that's what he like truly wanted to be. Like, no, he wants to spread his wings and be a box-to-box 8 is my read on Danny Pereira. Yes, it's good to defend. It's good to have some 6-like elements in your game when you're a midfielder, but that does not seem Danny's game. Danny is best when he is progressing the ball forward, progressive carries. He still needs to work on some final third stuff if he's going to be a true box-to-box midfielder, but certainly his ability to run in the open field, and you pair him with a 6 like Ilie, a true 6 who can distribute, but who can also lock down defend. I think we're going to see some things unlock in his game. And again, that move to a number 8, which we learned on Sunday, was not him trading with Ilie. It was Danny saying, I want the 8 now that's available, which is more definitionally him. And then Oh, that just happened to open up the number 6 for Ilie. How convenient. I think I'll
Yeah.
take the number that I've been playing with my entire MLS career.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it seems like letting the player shift into the role that he is most natural to. Our friend Profe has been very big on the Owen Danny era that we are going into in his mind, and I think that the reasoning behind the numerology of Owen playing 33 is that it's an 8 sliced in half and set next to itself. That's
Yeah.
to me that's what it is because Owen Wolf, I think, and this is entirely speculative, I think as a guy who has had to live in a weird version of the spotlight, he does not want to be the guy fighting for a heritage number that there might be some sort of tussle over. And I feel like it is in the interest of diplomacy that he found a number, 33, that to him is evocative of the number that he would want to wear, but that is not one that, whether at this team or any other team that he would move to, that he thinks that he would necessarily have to fight somebody over or there would be some sort of ego battle over.
There are 2 3s within you, and together they make an 8, is what you're saying.
That is the complexity of the Owen Wolf Swiss Army knife equation. If you look at Owen and Danny playing as dual 8s with Ilie as a 6, it just makes sense. It just feels right.
Right.
It feels like a really good strategic deployment of those 3 players.
But that might not even happen because also Besard Sabovic finally got signed as well, who seems to be a true number 8. We've been talking about him for a while before the signing happened. And we've been talking about, obviously, the Wolf era, as it were, right? So Danny, Owen, and then Sabovic and where he's going to fit into that. I just want to get some quick thoughts on that because I do want to bridge to my thesis for this particular episode.
We've got another player. We got Besard Sabovic, which that was his pronunciation of it. There's been some controversy as to whether the S should be pronounced as a Sa or a Sha, but he pronounced it Sabovic. And so that's what we're going with until we get any kind of a correction.
Bukhari did say that his name was Bukhari and everybody calls him Bukhari now. So
yeah. And then
what a player says his name is does not necessarily matter.
I think it matters, Phil. It matters to me. Okay. Like the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution matters to me. It may not be on the White House website anymore, but the U.S. Constitution matters to me. But Sabovic matters to me because he, again, is this, not just on paper, but I like the personality that it seems attached to a lot of these guys that are being brought in. It seems, yes, they do need to be able to perform on the field and have the stats and have the deliverables in that sense. But I think personality is very much a big part of what Roto is looking at. I was very much joking when I said James is available. What if James comes here? What a nightmare that would be locker room wise, introducing volatility, that kind of thing. Let him go literally anywhere else.
Let him go be Emi Rigoni's teammate at Lyon.
Let him go play in that Club World Cup. Good luck to him. I hope he has fun playing for FIFA. We mentioned Chicho Arango earlier. Nothing wrong with that stat sheet. Nothing wrong with that play style. But the scuttlebutt being that there had to be some reason why he went on that suspension last season, and it hasn't been made public. That's not really a good sign of it being not a big deal.
Right.
Whatever that.
And there are rumors out there,
was,
which we're not going to talk about necessarily, but there are rumors that indicate that maybe he is not a culture fit with RSL. San Jose is going to take a flyer on him. God bless us, everyone.
Yeah. The nature of it being unspoken kind of a thing sure doesn't speak well of it. And I feel like the very much the way that Roto is looking at building the roster is there are plenty of very talented players out there, and focusing on the very talented players who are not also going to cause a problem of some sort or be a weird culture fit or have some sort of a play style culture clash with their teammate because they think that the ball and the entire game revolves around them. Not really interested in those kinds of players. They can be the most talented players in the world, but Cristiano Ronaldo can go play in Saudi Arabia. Good for him. Hope he enjoys them.
I'm a little on guard about Uzuni, actually, in that respect, but Sabovic seems like somebody who's going to fit right in and basically do whatever's asked of him in the midfield. Seems to be versatile enough to where he can do a lot of different things fairly well. We don't have a lot of numbers on him from the FBref charts because Sweden's top flight league isn't really tracked as well as other leagues are. He's got some conference league minutes. Again, conference league is kind of an obscure, it's like their third tier club competition that Chelsea happens to be in this year, along with some other teams that you maybe have heard of. a little bit sporadically. It's not quite in the like Star Wars name versus European club name either or, but yeah, it's not your Man Cities or Real Madrids of the world that are in this competition, but they were doing fairly well. Djurgårdens was doing fairly well in this competition prior to Sabovic's exit, and yeah, I think it bodes well. Any last thoughts on him before? Because I do want to get to my thesis.
Yeah. No, that I'm teeing you up for it. That's all that I'm doing is
Okay, all right,
trying
okay.
to send you toward that thesis.
Okay, so again, yeah, so Sabovic obviously very much a central midfielder, not really a 10. Danny Owen, we've seen not really 10s. Uzuni is wearing number 10, but is very much a striker winger type, and again, seems like he's going to be best deployed in a two forward system. Therefore, we're maybe seeing Nico Estevez experimenting more with this 4-4-2. So I'm wondering again, Austin has never really had a 10, but I'm wondering with these moves if we are now fully in the 10 mindset and we are going to play without any kind of heliocentric attacking central midfielder, and it's going to be up to eights and wingers and fullbacks to feed Vasquez and to feed Uzuni.
I think this is a very good thesis. And I think where I come down on it is what a strategically genius move. Have them constantly
Okay.
looking for the 10 that isn't there. You're looking for the
Right.
guy with the 10 on his back, but he's playing like a striker, or now he's playing like a winger. Oh no, what do you do? I'm joking, but the eliminating the restrictiveness of we're either centering everything around that 10 or we're playing through the 10 or
Mhm.
we're why even worry about making that such a precious kind of thing when you
I
have
mean, it can
such
be
dynamic
effective in
players.
MLS as
It can
well.
be.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean that's the thing. Like Ricky Pooch was not necessarily billed as a 10 when he came into the league. He was thought of as more like the 6-8 hybrid, but very much last year took on a role as a 10. Everything went through him, like everything definitively statistically,
Yeah.
way more than any other player in the league went through him, and they rode it to great success. They had to, when he got injured, obviously replicate that to a degree with Gaston Brugman
Hmm.
in the MLS Cup, which is maybe where you would see again. A Sabovic would maybe thrive in that role. Danny with certain kind of steering could maybe flourish in that role. Maybe Owen can grow into that role. It's very possible. But again, a lot of the reason that they were able to shift from that kind of like heliocentric Ricky Pooch orchestrated thing to actually win MLS Cup was in part because they're playing the Red Bulls. If it was like a Crew or Cincinnati, maybe they wouldn't have fared as well, but also that they were able to rely on their attacking front three, which is pretty good, and then also had enough capable 6-8 type players to be able to move and progress things accordingly and create chances. And maybe, yeah, maybe that is the blueprint. And again, I think we were talking about this, I think, offline the other day,
Yeah.
not on podcast, but this being very reminiscent of what the Galaxy did last
Hmm.
offseason in terms of let's load up on a bunch of offensive talent and put them in the front and spend our DPs on attacking players, which is a very good MLS thing to do. Again, maybe with Sabovic, and again, there's one more spot that's open yet on the senior roster, and apparently Hassani Dotson is not very happy with what's going on in Minnesota, and I could see maybe somebody like that plugging in. It seems like we would have a lot of those kind of players all of a sudden, but that could be really fun. And I peeked at his chart late this afternoon before we came on, and that looks pretty good. That looks like it
Yeah.
might fit in this kind of game model. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. So, I mean, again, can Austin do it in a league that still rewards a 10 with that kind of Galaxy 24 MLS Cup approach of we're going to put a bunch of attacking talent, we'll have enough 6 and 8s that are competent enough to be able to get the ball to those front three and then let them do their thing.
This makes me think of something. I'm going to put you on the spot and to let you know where I'm
Okay.
heading. I'm thinking about Cincinnati with Lucho and Brandon. Um,
Yeah.
you say that the Central 10 thing that, for example, Galaxy
Mhm.
did last year with Ricky Pooch, it's something that can work
Right.
in MLS. It definitely worked with the
Mhm.
Galaxy last year.
Right.
To me, what I think I'm seeing as the genius of this thesis is that
Mhm.
playing with not worrying about centering everything around a 10 is what really works
Mhm.
well for these pieces that are on the board. And it's not,
Yeah.
these are the fragments of a roster that we have. This is finding the most, now I'm thinking in Spanish, the most precise way to deploy
Mhm.
the players that they've got in this roster, not go, here's an ideal thing that we want to try to make work as best we can with these players. Instead, it is
Right.
going, you know what, we're not even going to worry about that. And over the course of the season, if figuring out something that ends up going that direction and shifting that way works, then maybe they'll do that. To pat both of us on the back, what I love about your thesis here is that it really goes to what I have christened the new, very strict Austin formation. And that is the 4 something something. Based on what Nico told us before the open practice, based on what we saw them do in the open practice, based on everything that this layout of players is looking to say to us, is that this is positional play that is very much built to be hyper flexible, with a lot of hyper flexible players that are ready, willing, and able to do the job. We talked about when Bukari came in, we were like, looking at his play with Red Star Belgrade, he was not showboating. He was not looking to make himself the center of stuff. He was very much a true team player with an absolutely insane amount of speed in his legs and incredibly, he could be selfish. And it looks like this is a group of guys that they know when to take the moment to be selfish in the way that Owen Wolf did in that RSL goal he had last season, that to me is one of the cleanest, prettiest goals the club has had. And you don't see him as a player, for example, taking those selfish moments that we have seen folks just hang on to the ball or not feed the ball out to their teammate in some other combinations of what this club has done. It feels to me like the 10 is very much built around the fact that these guys are like, this is the Avengers team that we want. This is the group of guys that there isn't just one guy that everything revolves around.
Yeah, and you had mentioned Cincinnati, which I thought was interesting because, again, like Lucho Acosta is very much a heliocentric 10, but when they were most successful, they had Vasquez and Brenner playing off each other, which are 2 completely different strikers. And Vasquez was actually more in a sort of winger role with that. It can work, but examples of that, for example, Minnesota, when Reynoso had his personal journey, we shall say, that team coalesced and became better actually without Reynoso as this kind of hub that everything had to be around. Carlos Hill, really accomplished number 10 with the Revs, but if they don't have the attacking talent, and they've had a luckless string of strikers, much in the same way that Austin has in the last few years, that hasn't really worked out for them either. Last year, they were one of the worst teams of the year with one of the still best number 10s in the game. So I guess part of my fixation on getting a 10 in part was because I knew that there was going to be an open DP spot available. And then Austin's never really had a true number 10 before, but then Austin has also not had a really good number 9 before either. You could just say that maybe this first era, these first 4 years of Austin FC, you've had one really good year from Driussi, which was an MVP caliber season. And then otherwise, you haven't really had that much offensive talent coalescing on this team at all in the first 4 years. And now all of a sudden with Uzuni, with Vasquez, with Bukari, which I'm going to call the UVB front line. So again, UVB Rays. Watch out, goalies, you're going to get sunburned. Yeah, anybody?
I like it. I like it.
It's going to be really impressive just to see how that front 3 plays off each other and what they're going to be able to do. And again, I maybe said this last time, but this idea of, okay, you're going to get a Uzuni pinging a bunch of shots from the 18. If those don't go in, you've got Vasquez to clean those up. You've got Bukari to clean those up. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit about preseason, what we know so far. We saw a clip today from the game against the Battery, and Bukari had a really nice ball into Vasquez for a goal. And like that can happen if you've got somebody with speed on the wing, isolating players one-on-one, like Nico talked about, and you've got a really tall, really capable striker who can move in the box, then goals happen and all the requisite good things that come with the goals because they change games.
To bridge into that, I like that you picked up exactly what I was putting down about Cincinnati. To me, when it looked like Lucho wasn't wanting to go back to Cincinnati, but he was very much just not wanting to go back to MLS, or maybe he didn't want to go back to MLS for anything other than more money. To me, I feel as much as people treasure those memories of Brandon Lucho at Cincinnati, Brandon really did work a bit better in other configurations than having to feed everything through Lucho. And I feel like one of the explorations of this squad and one of the business values that they've got here is that they've brought in a bunch of guys that, at least from the way that things look right now, I don't think any of them are nightmares. They're not the kinds of guys that if they need to offload them, if they need to deal them elsewhere, that it will be real difficult to find a buyer. Is the thing. If one of these guys, if one of these pieces doesn't necessarily work, let's say Uzuni doesn't necessarily work, I can see them being able to deal him elsewhere, not just in the league, but outside of the league, deal him back to Europe.
Sure.
That really, on the business side of things, is something that makes me feel good about this because they are not They are really not picking up any distressed assets for once, which there was some overperformance and some magic that happened from some of those. But these are all assets for the club that they can do something with or find a way to deal. And maybe Owen Wolf is going to end up being more valuable to them in dealing him to another club because they're real good in the midfield. And, for the next stage of his career, he's going to be better somewhere else. Maybe that's the case. It does not worry me, the notion of them dealing Owen Wolf, dealing some of these other guys that we have spent seasons going, if they don't have him, what are they going to do? Because either their positional flexibility or their ability to drop in and do whatever's needed at a moment's notice is a big thing.
Or you just keep Owen and you let him sub in at 4 different positions. When Dessler or Biru come up with a knock in the 70th minute, then you throw a fresh Owen on for 20 minutes and he can do capable things there. Or you throw him on the wings just for kicks, or you have him sub in for Sabovic or Pereira, or even Ilya in cases.
Instead of having to break the glass on Owen every game, instead it's a, all right, Owen, don't kill yourself getting out onto the field. Go take a minute to warm up, that kind of thing. But preseason, we've gotten a bunch of shots of, we've got some trialist stuff going on. We've got draft picks playing in. We've got second team guys playing in.
Owen, he is very blonde in these photos.
Very
Seems
blonde.
like he's going to go with that. Yeah.
Look who's back again. Owen's back. Owen's back.
Tell a friend. Yeah. O'Brien's got some highlights working. This is the Swoon Tower part of Emergency Podcast now.
No, that's trademarked. We can't use that.
Okay.
Mike and Steph will come for us.
Right. It is the Swoon Tower portion of
the very French.
I hit it. See? Yeah, just enough difference. So we got Damian Loss stretching. Looks like we got Riley Thomas maybe with Biru.
Biru's
got a pretty fierce mustache working.
Riley Thomas was out there. Draft pick Riley Thomas was out there against Charleston Battery today. Trialist Ethan Chifambe was out there, who he was the mystery man that nobody could identify. Chifamba, the people were having trouble identifying, and finally they identified him. I expect to see Riley Thomas and Ethan Chifamba playing with the second team, along with some of their second team teammates that are worked in with the first team on first team contracts. Some of them, CJ might play some second team minutes, but I think that the confidence in CJ, I think we're going to see him predominantly with the first team this year. Irvin Torres doesn't have a first team contract yet. I feel like that could happen. I feel like Irvin Torres is very much looking to be the Kevin Sullivan of Austin, the teen wonderkind that very well could take up a first team roster spot relatively soon.
Yeah, with Thomas, I wonder if he maybe is accomplished enough to where he is going to play the majority of his minutes with the second team. But since there are supplemental spots that are still available, maybe he grabs one of those and can be a first team sub in a pinch without having to use one of those 4 special spots.
Yeah, I think he and Irvin Torres are the ones that I have tipped in my mind for being most likely for that.
Yeah, Patrick, unspellable last name. It looks like he's gotten some run in preseason, but again, I don't know that I have expectations for him beyond second team. But it's interesting. It's interesting times. Again, yeah, we are not learning much about preseason. It would be great to just have all these games streamed so we could watch them and pick things out, not just have things curated through social media pictures. But that's what we got. That's what we got to learn from until Coachella happens. And then 2 of those 3 games, of course, will be streamed. We'll be able to get some kind of moving pictures, some kind of sense of what this team looks like. Moving pictures. There we go. I sound young and contemporary.
On the Nickelodeon.
So, yeah. Any other second team stuff that you want to hit on? They have a full roster.
They have a full roster. They have 11 players. I know that, they put out a press release this week, and the first reaction from a few folks was they only have 11 players. And frankly, 11 players for a second team roster at this point in their preseason they have 11 players, which not all of those next pro teams can say that. And they could field a game day squad with the players that they've got. Notable absences that we did not previously know about. We knew that Chris Garcia had been picked up by forward Madison, a couple other guys that had posted their goodbyes, Sebastian Pino, for example. But ones that we learned were for sure no longer in the roster. Goalkeeper Aaron Cervantes, native to Southern California. Not sure where he ended up. Shaikh Toure, which was disappointing to me. I had a soft spot for him. Same goes for Bobosi Biarahanga. And really saddest for the Verde All Day family was Sal Antoni's is closed. We can't go back to Sal Antoni's Chop House. Sal Mazzaferro no longer on the roster. We found out today that he just signed with Atlanta United too. He's landed somewhere.
Okay,
But
that's good.
the guys that are there, Vlad, who just signed, Anthony Garcia and Peter Grogan up forward, midfielders, Diego Abarca, Jorge Alastui, also a new signing, Irvin Torres, defenders, Ruben Bonachera, Anthony De Anda, Antonio Gomez, and Nico Van Ryn, and the one goalkeeper officially on the roster at the moment, Marcus Hallstrup. I feel like Gillingham, the trialist goalkeeper who was worked in with Stephen Cleveland,
Mhm.
Damian Loss, and Brad Stuver. I think goalkeeper 4 there, he's gonna work into the second team for sure, because they need to have more than one goalkeeper, right?
For sure, sure. And Jorge Alastui, where did he develop, as we learned in the press
Uh,
release?
you'll have to help me because I don't have it right at the top of my noggin, and I didn't have my afternoon coffee that I usually have.
I sent you an insufferable text right after that. He
Oh
was
yeah,
with La Masia. He
yeah,
trained in Barcelona's system.
yeah.
And I texted you more like Spain FC.
Austin FFA, very much the Spanish have taken over.
Yeah,
Look,
yeah, for sure.
look, Ilie likes it. I bet.
Yeah, it's a good place to develop, right? I hear good players come from there.
I hear 1 or 2 good players came from that place. It's almost like completely overturning the scouting and recruitment department was a very important thing that it's good that
What?
they did. The thing that we see happening at Frisco, and that isn't to say that the way that Frisco's front office and sporting operation run things is the way that everybody should do things, is that they've got a bunch of North Texas SC players that are joining their first team after winning a championship there. And from watching a bunch of those North Texas games, a lot of those North Texas players are real good. And if I have to give FC Dallas credit for anything, they have been doing a good job of taking advantage of the developmental league in building up these young players that can play first team minutes or can be dealt to other clubs. And it feels very much like the Roto era of things. It has cycled things around when it comes to the second team so that it can serve that same function.
Right, right. Yeah. However, my friend at Big D Soccer, Drew Epperly, he did a retrospective on their off season and so many more players going out than going in. And I just asked him, so what do you think? What's the early prognostication on FC Dallas? And he said, I think it's going to be a long season. Obviously, Alan Velasco just went to Boca. Jesus Ferrer, of course, went to Seattle. Paulo Areola also went to Seattle. So they've lost a lot of their defining talent. And yeah, you can bring in these North Texas guys and they were great. And they won MLS Next Pro and all that. But MLS is a whole different animal than MLS
Yep.
Next Pro. And
Yep.
how are you going to adjust to that? And I'm just going to say, I think Austin's Copa Tejas chances are looking pretty good right now.
I agree. Even though most of those matches don't actually happen until August. The first one comes
Right.
up in April against Houston, and Houston's in a bit of a
Yep.
rebuild. Knowing that the fan base is planning to come out in full force for that April game. And look, it's a long road from here to August. I think that if they are still at Dallas, if they are still mostly relying on a bunch of North Texas first teamers as a big chunk of their roster, I don't know that the summer transfer window is going to make that big of a difference for them by August in terms of
Right.
reinforcements. So I feel like we're looking at pretty good odds on the Copa Tejas front.
Yeah. I think they'll probably try to use it because they'll have to use it at that point.
Yeah.
Certainly they do have people that are in charge of acquiring players, and that is something that they're going to have to do. But yeah, I think it's going to be a tough rebuild for them. And then Houston obviously lost their 2 big talisman players, right? So, I mean, obviously Hector Herrera did not have a great 24 compared to
No.
23, but was still pretty important. Then Coco Carrasquilla, their best player, arguably one of the best players in the league. He is finally gone now. He is with Pumas now. Maybe that is the way that he's going to get to Europe, which is probably where we think he's going to end up. But yeah, for the time being, he is in Liga MX. All right. So anything else that we need to cover player wise? We do have one little last bit of fun business to attend to, but anything else that you want to bring up team wise, first team, second team?
Not really. Year over year, I keep coming back to this thing of a year ago, Phil. Would you have believed that we'd be at January 24th and going, one senior roster spot left, just one,
Right.
and it looks pretty good, even without that one being filled yet.
Three completely different DPs.
3 completely different DPs, 2 brand new to the club as of the winter window of all things. Remember, everybody thought the summer window was where every major DP signing was going to come from. Turns out that maybe Roto was making it so that he had options depending on when he needed to fill one of those spots. I feel like we're going to have to redefine what the emergencies are going to be going forward if this is what we're looking at.
Kit leaks.
Yeah.
Injuries too. I mean, again, there are emergencies that can come up. It is soccer.
True.
So there are losing streaks. Obviously, chemistry with a bunch of new players, new coach. Terrible things can happen, but we'll be here whether they are good, whether they are bad, whether they are kit leaks, all the emergencies we will cover. And so, one last little bit of things that we need to talk about. As you know, Emergency Podcast is the audio arm of Verde All Day, which I founded right after the striker went on hiatus in August 23. Moisés has come on board to do coverage, providing a lot of the midweek press conference question asking, and then second team articles and various other articles here and there. Like, for example, the one that he was referring to, where here's the one rosy scenario for Austin to get into the 2024 MLS Cup playoffs, and here is how that eventually wildly diverted from what was actually reality. So there were a lot of different multiverses, and only one multiverse was as rosy as Moisés pointed out, and the actual multiverse that manifested was not so rosy. Verde All Day has been on Substack, which is a really kind of good place for that to transition to. At the time that we went on Substack, a lot of soccer sites were on that. Pretty easy to get up and running on that. At that point, I wanted something easy on ramping, something that just focused on Austin FC, which of course I love doing. It's great. Really have valued everything that we were doing. But at this point, it is time. This sounds like we're wrapping it up, but no, we are not. We are moving to Ghost, a platform that a number of soccer creators are moving on to. The aforementioned Drew Epperly at Big D Soccer has gone on there. Some other sites have moved on there as well. We're going to do that. If you are a Verde All Day subscriber, you will still get articles in your inbox. There's a few kind of back end pieces of weirdness still happening. I've lost a few evenings to things. I've learned how to code in a language that I have never used before to create a patch that needed to be created. But we have done all those things. We have an attractive new customizable site that is at verdeallday.com. So no longer do you need to go to the Substack site, just verdeallday.com will take you to the website, which looks gorgeous. And again, if you are a subscriber, you will have the seamless experience. I'm going to put something up on Uzuni and what's next. And at that point, you should get that in your inbox. And then at that point, we will archive the Substack, which is an incredible chronicle of a pretty interesting, not happy time in Austin FC's existence, but I think certainly a kind of momentous time, right? So obviously, 23 and the ranker that happened there. And then, of course, all last year, the Wolf Out movement, the final year of Driussi.
All the previous posts are migrated over. All the content lives on in the new Ghost install. We appreciate people continuing to preach the Verde All Day gospel, as it were.
Absolutely. And then the real exciting thing is we've done this now in the off season and did this intentionally in the off season at this kind of time. Again, it was tough because all these signings happened. We didn't want to necessarily switch horses in mid acquisition of multiple players. Now that we don't have any more senior roster spots to give, this seemed like a good time to turn the switch on and move it over. So yeah, so all of 2025 and hopefully beyond that is going to be chronicled on verdeallday.com. There's some stuff we're going to still tweak with in the first few weeks, probably. Still trying to get a handle on everything that's possible design wise and gateway wise and things like that. But the standard tier is still $6 a month. And then there's going to be a premium tier where there's going to be a kind of monthly recap type thing that I'm going to do. Plus, we'll have some other goodies as well down the line. Again, if you are a subscriber and you're on that standard tier and you want to move to that premium tier, you can do that yourself. You can manage your account in Ghost. You'll have to log in the first time and you'll get a little thing into your email box that will allow you to click a button and get access to all the paid content on the site. But if you're a paid subscriber, that should be a fairly easy process, right? And all those buttons do work. They did not work a few days ago, but they work now because I learned to code. I took a front-end web development class 10 years ago and only used it sporadically since then. And all those emotions are coming back to me now. What do you mean this thing's broken? This is terrible. I'm frustrated. I'm feeling angst. And then, oh, there's a fix. And all of a sudden, for a brief moment, I feel that all is at peace with the world and I feel extremely competent. Developer life, man.
Got to learn how to code so that when the velociraptors are chasing you, like Ariana Richards in Jurassic Park, you can say, this is a Unix system. I know this.
Right. All right, so we're going to leave it there. Thanks so much. We will be back soon with more emergencies. Obviously, there are going to be some preseason games to watch in a little bit. I'm going to a soccer nerd conference next weekend, so I'm not sure when we're exactly going to be able to record. We're going to try to get that in at some point, if not over the weekend, maybe early the week after. Definitely some things to talk about. And then, of course, we are gearing up for the start of the regular season, which we're very excited about.
I just
Yeah.
realized that Bukari, Vasquez, Uzuni's jersey numbers, they're literally holding 9, 10, 11.
Oh, yeah, nice.
It's the 9, 10, 11 formation.
That is like the worst thing I've ever heard in the history of the 7 years that I've been on this planet.